poor people are embarrassing, so we won't invite you to the wedding. This is the end of our relationship."
Oh, that's perfect timing. I was thinking of cutting ties with you too. Women don't go back on their word. Keep in mind, you're no longer part of our family. Our reasons for cutting ties with you are greater. My name is Ashley. I'm 60 years old, and I enjoy foraging for wild vegetables with my husband during our walks. In spring, we can find lots of bracken and strawberries. Living in the countryside is the best. Eating seasonal foods is good for your health and makes you feel young again. This is a story from when I was a bit younger. My husband had taken early retirement from the company he worked for many years and had been working as a traffic controller for a year. At that time, we were both 52 years old. We had passed the midpoint of our lives and were beginning to think about our remaining years. However, after my husband retired early, he no longer had to work late or live a life where we rarely saw each other. His salary decreased, but it was enough for the two of us to live comfortably. It wasn't luxurious, but we enjoyed our peaceful days together. But an event occurred that disrupted our peaceful days. Our eldest son, John, suddenly called to tell us he was getting married. I was so surprised that I asked, "Who's getting married?" John, who we hadn't heard from in a while, said it was him. I apologized for being so surprised. John, unlike his younger brothers, had no romantic relationships and had always seemed a bit absent-minded. He had never talked about having a girlfriend. But he said he was getting married and wanted to introduce her to us. I was surprised and apologized for not knowing about his girlfriend. He said they had been dating for a short time and hadn't had a chance to introduce her. He asked us to keep the following Saturday free for the introduction. After hanging up, I couldn't shake a bad feeling. John had always been a bit naive and often took on unreasonable requests from others. I remembered an incident from his school days. A classmate had asked him to let them cheat off his test, and without hesitation, he had agreed. They both got caught and were reprimanded. During university, he had almost been involved in selling fraudulent information products because a friend invited him. Luckily, he avoided trouble when he found the office empty. Given his naive nature, I worried about the situation. What if he was being asked to take on someone else's problems? I worried until the day his girlfriend came to visit. When she arrived, I was shocked. She was visibly pregnant. I looked at my husband, who was just as surprised. Our son noticed our reactions and looked at us as if to say,
"I understand how you feel."
But I decided it was better than if he was taking on debt for someone else. As long as they were in a relationship, it was fine. I welcomed her and invited her in. She responded with, "What an old-fashioned house." I tried to interpret her words positively. Maybe she was just used to puppeteering and was making a mistake. I looked at my son, who looked embarrassed, and avoided eye contact. I tried to stay calm and deal with the situation maturely. But the more she spoke, the worse it got. She barely knew our son, and they had only met a few times. They had met at a company mixer, had a fling, and hadn't exchanged contact details. They met again through mutual acquaintances 2 months ago, and she said she was pregnant. They decided to get married after talking it over. My husband and I were shocked. Even if that were the case, it was inappropriate to discuss such personal matters in front of his parents. But our son, being too honest, couldn't lie. I had doubts about the baby's paternity, but it wasn't something I could say at that moment. You can't suggest a DNA test during a greeting. The fact that our son had been intimate with her before marriage was enough. We had no choice but to accept it. As we were thinking, she continued with her disrespectful comments. She called our house a rabbit hutch and laughed. She insulted our teacups, saying they were too country. I tried to explain my husband's job as a traffic controller, but she wasn't interested. My husband had saved a woman's life at a construction site by shielding her from a car. He had performed a heroic act and was our pride. The woman he saved was a single mother on her way to pick up her child from daycare. But she dismissed it, asking if he got a reward. I didn't want her as a daughter-in-law. My husband scolded our son, telling him to be more responsible. We couldn't tell our 30-year-old son not to marry. We accepted their marriage. Our other sons had families and didn't rely on us too much. We wanted the same for our eldest. He felt responsible because of the baby. He declared they would manage on their own. They left, and we felt they didn't want much to do with us. 2 months later, the wedding was set. Her friend managed the wedding hall, so they secured a date quickly. We were busy with preparations. Her family ran a well-known local food processing company. But her family was against the marriage and refused to meet us. Our son often called us to vent his frustrations. He wanted to protect her, not for money. I reminded him that he needed to be prepared for opposition and couldn't rely on us. He got angry, asking if we wanted him to suffer. My husband took the phone and calmed him down. He told our son that he needed to stop complaining to his parents. Our son apologized and hung up. One day, our son and his fiancée came to our house with a request. They asked us to pay for the wedding. We were shocked. They had said they would handle everything themselves. Our son said he had savings, but it wouldn't cover her extravagant plans. I snapped, asking why her family couldn't pay if she wanted a grand wedding. She claimed it was our responsibility because she was pregnant. I reminded her that they had promised to manage on their own. She accused us of being inflexible. I retorted that she was being unreasonable. She insulted my husband's job, calling us poor. My husband angrily asked what they wanted from us. She said we needed to pay to avoid being looked down on. Our son reluctantly agreed with her. I decided we couldn't give in. If we paid, they would keep asking for more. I firmly refused, saying we wouldn't be attending the wedding. She smirked and said that was fine. We cut ties with them. Surprisingly, it felt refreshing. We didn't know if the wedding took place. Our other sons decided not to attend out of respect for us. We wanted no further involvement. A year later, they unexpectedly visited us. They rang the doorbell repeatedly. She greeted us casually through the monitor. She was holding a child. Our son stood behind her, looking nervous. She said they brought our grandchild to see us. She mentioned seeing my husband's heroic video online. They wanted to record a video with him and the child. My husband, confused, said no. Recently, my husband had saved a mother and child from a car accident. He shielded them, breaking his ribs in the process. He said it was worth it to save 2 lives. The mother turned out to be someone he has saved before. This story went viral, making him a local hero. We received gifts from neighbors we barely knew. She insisted on recording a video, saying it would make her famous. My husband refused, saying it was unfair to the child. She kept pushing the child towards him. My husband told her to stop and didn't take the child. She tried to push past us into the house. I blocked her and told her to leave. She called me mother and asked to come in. I told her not to call me that and to leave. She looked confused, not understanding my refusal. I reminded her that she was the one who cut ties. We were no longer family. She insisted, but I remained firm. My husband backed me up, saying they were no longer welcome. She protested, saying the police wouldn't do anything about a family dispute. My husband said it didn't matter. She asked why strangers were allowed in our house. My husband explained they were friends he had helped. She demanded to know why they were in the house. I sighed and explained the situation again. I told her they had become friends after the accident. She didn't seem to understand. I told her to leave again. My husband reiterated our stance. She accused us of being unreasonable. I told her to stop being rude and leave. She refused and tried to argue. Our son looked shocked and confused. I told him about the missing items from our house. My husband confirmed it. Our son was stunned. I showed him the online listings of our missing items. He was speechless. She admitted to taking them. She said her parents were stingy and didn't give her money. I told her that was no excuse for stealing. She tried to justify her actions, but I didn't let her. Our son called her behavior the worst. I asked if the child was really his. She looked nervous and avoided answering. Our son demanded an answer. She finally admitted the truth. I told them to leave and take the child. We closed the door on them. Later, our son sent a letter. He had done a DNA test and found out the child wasn't his. He apologized and said he had divorced her. He asked to reconcile with us. We refused. Our other sons agreed with our decision. She was still trying to get back with our son. We decided to keep our distance. She tried to get support from her family, but they rejected her. She was left to fend for herself and her child. Meanwhile, we enjoyed our peaceful life. My husband had retired from his traffic controller job, and we lived on his pension. We had enough savings and lived comfortably. The rising cost of food didn't affect us much. We foraged for wild vegetables and exchanged goods with neighbors. Our simple life was fulfilling. We were surrounded by nature and kind people. I was grateful for every day. Today, my husband and I planned to go for a walk. It felt like a day from our younger days. I wanted to wear a new scarf I bought. I still wanted to look cute for my husband, no matter my age.